Right. So I'm sitting here on my own little merry-go merry-go-round of life. I suppose the Indian saying samskara. You know, when you're just going round in circles in misery, could otherwise be used, but I prefer merry-go-round of life. And it's the weirdest thing. It's like I looked at my life on a very simplistic level and I said, right now, this is where I am. What do I need in terms of structure? Keeping it to the bare minimum to put me in the best place to go forward. And I created the plan and I implemented it. It's a very simple plan. I won't go into the details, but it's a very simple plan. There's not a lot to it. And I've adjusted it and I've tweaked it and I've improved it. And I've been doing this for about a year now. And life is fighting me. Life is taking me. And it's just making this really, really simple thing I'm trying to do in life as the crux of my problems, as the crux of everything. And because I have space in my life where I have a mental health disorder, well, you get given certain levels of space and other levels are taken away from you. But in the sense of the place where I've been given space, it should make it really easy to do something like this. And life is fighting me, you can't believe it. I've done it every day, and it's just, life is throwing me off. I can't describe it. But I'm here and the idea popped into my head about making a live stream on the ego, and I thought it'd snap me out of my eyes numbing to the constant G-forces of the merry-go-round turning and being blinded by boredom. Blinded by boredom, seeing the same thing, same struggle, and there shouldn't be a need. And it got me thinking, because the ego, when I reference it, it's always in a bad light. And if you're in spiritual circles, it's often got a bad rap. But the ego, it's not a bad thing. Well, the ego can be a bad thing, and is most likely going to be a bad thing for most people. But with the awareness of it and the honing of it, it's it's a weird thing, because I was going to say it was an attainment. It's an attainment to have an ego if you're spiritual, which is a really weird thing. You want to fight to get rid of it, and that's the application. Because the ego, think of it like a child. A child just is, until they start thinking and start experiencing the world. The child just is. The child is instinctive. They don't have ulterior motives to anything, or they shouldn't do. And that's the purity of ego. And what we need to do is keep that purity of ego all the way through life. And as we grow, it's to learn from that place. And chances are, growing up in this world, we're going to develop negative characteristics of the ego that spirituality really does hone on as the thing that's wrong and bad. But I believe, again, from the way and the teachings my uncle passed on to me, that it's possible to have an ego in this world and to enjoy things of this world and be alive as an individual within a collective and know that you're not separate. And that takes a lot of education from that place of childhood innocence. And even in that place of childhood innocence, the ego isn't totally pure. I mean, you're never totally pure, but it's to know that, I guess. The child that comes in and they're totally innocent. But the child is corrupted as a part of this world. The things that we partake in and the implications of doing very, very simple things in this world. The burden and karmic burden that the consciousness takes on doing very simple things. It's like the world is a massive glob of sticky consciousness. And you've either got to tiptoe through life like anything, walk through eggshells your whole life with the spiritual awareness as in the parents at the time of the child's upbringing, to instill in them the right knowledge and awareness, have the control over them to make sure they don't partake in certain things that are commonplace for a normal human being. But then there's two things that happen if the parents are spiritually aware and they manage to raise a child karma-free and egoless to this world. They get the child to the age of a teenager, and the teenaged child is then able to take on that awareness and the teachings that have been imparted by the parents and live a life thereafter by himself. The child's always going to be tiptoeing through life. That's not really natural in itself. But then it's arguable the parents are spiritually aware enough to instill in the child the challenge at some point where that child has to stop tiptoeing. And then he becomes a part of the world with the knowledge of all of the karmic burden that being of this world takes on, and then he's able to make wise decisions thereafter from his own accord. But my uncle, and I guess where my nature really is to be a bit more stupid. Because in stupidity, you're a part of this world from a child. You partake in this world from a child, and that karmic burden gets put on your shoulders. And it's almost like to be split, have a split personality, because you're like, yeah, I know this piece of meat that sits on my plate that smells so nice that I'm about to eat and it's going to fill me up and nourish me is from a dead animal. An animal gave its life for me to eat now. And it's to be aware of that contradiction, that you're taking on this burden. Why are you eating meat, and why aren't you just eating vegetables? Why aren't you totally clean as a human being? Well, it's my culture to eat meat. So, in other words, it's a very sticky process, consciousness, karma. And unfortunately, consciousness folds. So, how best to be a natural egoless ego in this world is questionable. But for me, my approach to life, the way my parents and later my uncle shaped me, was to be natural to life and to be aware of what life really is about on all levels, including spirituality. Try and be as compassionate as possible, but be of this world first. In other words, you have the means to help so many people, and you have the means to make so many people's lives miseries. And it's not always about just making people's lives better, because you can't. You're of this world. How are you going to structure a life to constantly allow yourself to give to people and not support yourself? Where are you going to get that? It's like getting a massive paycheck every month and giving it away. It's possible. But you've still got to put in the time and energy to get that massive paycheck and be a part of this world. And in that process, you've gone and got yourself a load of karmic problems. So then the question becomes, in that place of offsetting the karma you've created for the karma you're clearing, is that a fair balance? Who's taking it on themselves to make that decision? Why are you doing that? So it's not to overcompensate, it's to be very balanced in all places. And also to be as simple as possible, because it's a very complex thing. Making yourself egoless when you've come from a place of ego. And not only that, what we're talking about is not to be egoless, it's not to be totally wild like Shakti. It's to be What we're talking about is to come from ego, to clean yourself, to clean that ego. By practicing egoless and non-attachment and all of that stuff, and then to find yourself in a place with an ego that's not clean, it's dirty, it's muddy, but it's of the earth. And you realize that from a perspective it's egolessness within ego. And really, if we're being honest, as human beings coming from a place of ego, the trappings and the luxuries that the ego bonds to would be lovely to have when you're in that place of egolessness. You don't want to be like, oh, I'm egoless, and then everybody to look at you like, but you've just renounced everything, you haven't got a thing. You're a nomadic, you don't know where your next meal's coming from, you haven't got any clothes on. And that's one aspect of ego. And it's arguable why. Why? Because this is what I'm describing is where my life is going. Now why, I don't know. I know I've put in a lot of application in terms of spirituality, but spirituality is like the ocean. You've got to start drinking the whole ocean. It's not possible. You start drinking spirituality and the process and way and the journey that you drink spirituality shapes a finality of it. And I guess that's until spirituality comes out of hiding. Because at the moment, spirituality isn't defined by anything. Spirituality is infinite. So we're always going to get to a place and we're always going to have 8 billion versions of spirituality on this planet. Because spirituality is the past, spirituality is hidden. Spirituality is on the down low. And it's not defined, or at least some people try and define it. When you put it all together, it's a big mess. It doesn't make sense. So when we get to the finality of that place, it's because of who we are, it's because of our nature. And maybe that's what happened a few thousand years ago. Spirituality got boring. And they said, look, we need spirituality for life. We don't realise it, or at least we're not going to realise it, because spirituality is so important, and if spirituality gets boring, oh, can't imagine what that would do to life. So you'd imagine, like, a few thousand years ago, if spirituality ever got boring, said, fuck it, let's fuck life, hide spirituality. The process of life is spiritual, and every human being will find their own version of spirituality so they can live in whatever madness we create. And at the moment, that's a bit like the spiritual journey in this world. There's nobody that owns spirituality. I mean, the Hindu tradition in India, people have been flocking to since the 60s. You've got Tibet that's been ripped apart by China now. Even the Dalai Lama isn't allowed in his own home. And it's the time of the Piscean age. And consciousness is meant to be returning from the land of the Oriental tribe, Tibet, back to the land of the Red tribe. So we're in transition in terms of spirituality as well. What I'm trying to get at is from my journey, from the inputs I've had in my life, this is what my life is looking like. It's to be of this world, to be alive, to be present with all the problems of the world. Be an adult, be mature, be a good person, but not afraid to bite if life says bite. You don't have to be violent, but just be strong enough to stand in your power and say no sometimes. And really what that looks like is a ego. There's no other way to say it. It will look like an ego. What's the point? That's what's coming to mind, and that I can't tell you. What's the point of the ego? We'll just be honest with ourselves, isn't it? The ego is about experiencing life on a level that's separate from other life. And in that place we can become arrogant through our ignorance. So it's about maturity in ego, I guess. It would be great to share the planet with 8 billion other individuals, all knowing they're a part of the collective. The ego can be bliss through spiritual practice and through chance and through this world in a very simplistic, innocent, grown-up way. You can't ever tell anybody that. Because if you tell somebody the ego is bliss, they're forever going to want the ego. The truth is the journey is so painful, you're never going to want that finality. It's insignificant as a result of the journey. In this world, you have to, within yourself, heal the entire world, to heal your own ego, to be able to get to that place. Can you really look at the world's problems, the pain that's in the world, and find a way to heal it within yourself? Hopefully we can find a way that isn't painful. Hopefully we can just heal the world. The ego is both the problem and the goal. It's almost like the solution to where we find ourselves now. We need to live. We need to be alive. We need to experience life in this world, this planet that we're on, until our consciousness gets so advanced naturally that we're like, doesn't matter anymore. For now, we're on the verge of two countries going to war, 2022, Russia and Ukraine. We're far from that place. Basically, it's a bit like practicalities. Let's use the ego to kill the ego. The ego's the problem, this separation. Countries are going to war, nothing else matters. People are going to die for no reason. Suffering is going to be present in many lives as a result of the bombs and the destruction that's caused. Nothing the ego can ever have can ever stand against that. The ego is worthless when that is on the other side. In other words, we need to clean up our act in terms of being good people, which means being as spiritual as possible, because that's what spirituality really is. How can you be spiritual and not a good person? Oh, I'm sure there are ways, but it's always going to be polarized against something else, and then you're not really, how are you? It's just part of the process, part of spirituality. But what we're talking about is being human, and everything it means to be human and spiritual. And in that place you need to be a good person too. I'm sure you can find a way to be a bastard if you really want, but you need to balance it out so ultimately you're a good person. Nothing the ego can experience is worth the suffering that some people are going to have to go through at the present. So we're honest with the situation, and we're a bit Syrian about things. I say Syrian in terms of the planet, constellation. And I referenced that because the way I see Syrians is the way I see Russians in a way. The way they go about technology and science is a bit like they don't quite have the restrictions that we have here in the UK, and I'm sure in America. We're very constrained within the parameters that we can operate, whereas Russians are a bit looser with those parameters, and they start developing technology in terms of health, for instance. And it's a bit more rugged, you know, it's a bit more rough around the edges, sorry. But in honesty, what I see coming from Russia is far more effective than the ideas that we're getting. So in terms of health, we need to be looking to Russian technology. What are they developing? Because it's very, very simplistic stuff. And really, that's what you want. You want something that's like a 10 quid that you can give to every single human being on the planet. What's that going to cost? I don't know, 8 billion times 10? Is that 80 billion? I don't know when we go to trillions, that's what I'm trying to say. But anyway, 80 billion pounds and you heal the whole planet, sort of thing. But that's what we're talking about, really simple technology. That's not perfect. It's not going to get you all the way, but for a tenner, to get you like 95% of the way to enlightenment, done deal. What's there to think about? It's that sort of energy I get from the Russian minds towards technology and science. And that coldness that I see in Russians, the very closed minds, is the way I see Syrians. But that's on the inside. On the outside, Syrians are like jolly lions. But within a jolly lion, you've got that cold mindset that's colder than Putin. Like ice cold mind with the appearance of a jolly lion. And really, that's what we need to do with the ego. We need to just really be brutal with it, to say, look, you've got no worth in this world, you're the problem. We're going to war again because of this big ego called Russia and this big ego called Ukraine and this, well, you're an ego, but you don't have a body, NATO. And then you've got the other one that doesn't have a body, United Nations, and you've got the European Union, that's a collective, a club of egos. So it's a really big ego, that one. But what I'm trying to get at is this almost like the ultimate is the ego's going to die. How many hundreds of years? Maybe we can do it in a few decades if we're lucky. But it's got to die. The ego's alive at the moment. And it's not, well, again, it's the problem. At the crux of our problem as human species. But in direct relationship to the war that's taking place, it's not at fault. So what I'm trying to say by that again is that we could, if we really wanted to as a species, find ourselves in this place of turmoil in terms of the planet. Don't forget, you've got to heal the entire pain and suffering of every human being on the planet to really find that place of balance within ego. It's not an easy task. We can't take that too lightly. Sorry, I'm just trying to find my smokes. I'm not quite sure what I've done with them. Anyway, we could, if we really wanted to, take this. We find ourselves invincible and those are very powerful in our ignorance. We could say, let's just stop. Everyone take their ego where they are now. We can go on with a it's not like the business, the bliss, another for aeons if we wanted to. 8 billion individuals knowing they're all God, living together in harmony by nature. And with a few thousand years of madness in their past, themselves in that place of technology, advancements it would have normally taken, and to use all of that, use all of the world that we find ourselves now of our spiritual Atlantic bliss, everything that's come before. Imagine the Great Pyramids with on them or something. Just, you know, that sort of idea. To go into war. You can hope for it all you want. It doesn't matter. Hopefully it does still come to fruition by chance. But until we have to heal the world first. Nothing else matters. Until we do. If we're lucky, we might find ourselves in that place where we have that opportunity. It's too serious. Use the to contemplate. For now, I need to 20 in your whole week. Treat at the end of it. A little pat on the head and a treat by your owner. This week, good girl this week. You've worked hard, and now's the weekend. Do as much work as you can. Not to enjoy the week. It's been bruised, it's clothed in different garments.